So hello everyone, good afternoon. My name is Mila Đorđević and I'm very honored to be here tonight with you. Thank you to all of you who came and decided to this Friday evening spend with us speaking about feminism, second, first or third. So I would like to thank to Danilo and to Valeria for believing me and giving me this opportunity to be along their side. And I would also like to thank to Professor Đorđević for this discussion, which was lasting like in the last 1 hour, and also for organizing this whole event, this whole school. I think it's really important. It's so important that I brought my friends here. So, and I hope so that in the next years it will be one master program, and upon which this faculty will be recognized. So my task now is to speak about gender inequalities with reference to Serbia. So Professor Danilo was speaking about theoretical background, and now my idea is to give a context in the reference to Serbia and to the region. And I just would like to brought your attention to the first day of this school, when Professor Miodrag Jovanović was speaking about the difference between law and gender law. So during this course, some professors were approaching these subjects more from the gender law, like part of the jurisprudence, like legal science, which studies legal norms like regulating gender. And here we are taking the completely external point of view, speaking from sociological point of view on gender relations in Serbia, just for the beginning. And now I have, since I will be speaking about social inequalities, but mostly poverty, I'm interested whether do you agree with this picture. So does poverty have a woman's face? Does poverty has like any face? Is it like woman's, child's, man's? Is it black or intersectional? Yeah, that's true. So, but like, I believe that it's completely fine just to start from there. Like, it has no gender or it has gender. So, do you see any connections between poverty and gender? Are women more in risk of falling into poverty than men?
No.
Okay, can you elaborate on that or no? Like,
because women through history.
Yeah.
Well, women through history could make money in some other ways. Let's say like that.
During the history, and now they can, so they are not in the risk of poverty.
Even now they can. It's a really bad way of earning money, but men are more difficult to earn money than women now and then.
Okay.
That's my point.
Okay. I will just now, because I have some slides upon that, so I will just thank you for the comment. I'm just like picking up the comments right now. Nemanja?
I can see critiques about this sentence, but I'm actually fine with this sentence, meaning the idiom a woman's face is just used as a first stance intentional thesis when we talk about poverty and intersectionality and stuff. So it's not, it's just a bit generalized, but from a starting point of view. So let's talk about women and is there a wage gap and so on.
Pay gap, yeah. Okay, so there is some bigger risk for women, in your opinion, falling into poverty. With some generalizations, but let's say yes, okay? Any other comments? Yeah.
Yes, I agree with Nemanja that women and especially kids alongside with single mothers are more at risk to become poor. And also my first association when we mentioned the word poverty is actually women and kids, but not only women and kids, but first picture that comes to my mind is black women and picture of kids in like these parts of third world countries.
Yeah. But since I'm gonna speak about Serbia, so like we leave the black face aside, but maybe Roma people can be issue here. Okay, thank you. So we have like pay gap, we have no risk at all, we have single mothers. Okay, anything else that falls to your mind? Okay, just for the beginning, this is completely fine, because we can see who is first day here and who has been here for 2 weeks. But I'm gonna show you some data with a reference to Serbia and try to see why, to show you why women are in greater risk. So these are the data from the Statistic Office of Republic of Serbia for 2021, and you can see the risk of poverty divided by age. Okay, I will just move this a little bit. Yeah. By age and by gender. So this darkest blue is the middle one, light blue men's risk of poverty, and this orange one, let's say it like that, are women's risk of poverty. We can see that the lowest is during the working period, which is expected, but we can see slight differences between men and women in favor of women, but they're not so big. But what I want to show you here, that these statistics are not does not give a good visibility of gender issues on poverty, because they're done on the level of households. So if women are in the households which are above the threshold which is needed for the poverty line, above the poverty line, then there will be no in the risk of poverty. But inside that very household, I'm going to show you that they are not so in a good position, and that there is a lot of left on the like bargaining power between the partners, and if they want to leave that household, the situation becomes much more worse. So that's the reason why it's really important to have look at single parents, which is like my first topic. But before that, I'm gonna just briefly show you what like basic ideas we're gonna cover. So we're gonna speak about one-parent families, gender pay gap, okay, work-life balance, property ownership, resignation of inheritance, and unpaid work, which all contributes in some way to greater risk of poverty on a female side than on the male side. So, okay, okay. And now we are at the first topic. So one-parent families, or the other translation, single parenthood families. And my question for you is like, who is single parent? So I have a child, and where is my husband if I'm single parent in Serbia? What do you think?
You can be, I guess, divorced, but with full custody. You can be widow.
But I have a question regarding the full custody. What if, so my ex-husband has a full custody, but he's not paying for alimentation?
That's like another issue with that. I mean, yeah, we were talking about it this morning, about the alimentation issue and impossibility to be, how should I say, enforced all the time equally. So it's issue in Serbia now, currently, and it's debate about that.
Yeah. True. So I can be a widow as well, so my husband can be dead. Okay. What if he is just what if he is just in prison? So we are in a marriage and he's in a prison and my kid is with me. So am I legal single parent or no? Or for example, other example, what if I wasn't in a marriage at all, so I got pregnant, I have a child, and my father is not recognizing that child at all. So, yeah, but I don't have a husband, so it's like it's strange for me. Okay, so what I wanted to show you through these examples, that there are various situations where we can say that someone is a single parent, but in the legal sense he's not recognized as a single parent. So, for example, there is this critique that in Serbia, in Serbian laws, there is no adequately recognized legal category for single parent, and legal definition which I found is that a single parent is the parent who single-handedly takes care of a child in a situation where the other parent is dead, unknown, or deprived of parental rights. So only 3 situations: dead, unknown, or deprived of parental rights. So there is all other situations which we mentioned which are not falling into these legal definitions. So it's rather narrow, and we were speaking about all these examples. And because we don't have like uniform legal concept of a single parent, we cannot have any reliable statistics regarding this phenomena. And like right now you can see in newspapers or in the internet, the numbers goes from 1,000 to 79,000 single parents in Serbia, but probably number is much higher. And why I am mentioning single parents, like as you already said, they have a worse position in labor market, lower average household income because it's one parent, not 2, supposing that 2 of them will work. Poor overall financial situation, higher degree of dependence on the formal and informal networks, what Danilo was speaking about, women in Serbia and in Belgrade and Svetozareva, more present feeling of loneliness, and significant spending of resources for welfare of children. And what we have, so we don't have like official statistics done by Republic of Serbia, but we have one survey or study done by professors from Faculty of Philosophy. It's rather old study, but the newest which I found, and it took around like 900 respondents, and you can see what are the bigger chances, women or men, to be a single parents in Serbia? This is like a rhetoric question. And so the greater the chances are for women to be a single parents in Serbia, and you can see that they divided all respondents into 3 categories, like divorced parents, group which are unmarried, and group where one parent is alive. So 85% of mothers, 97% of mothers, and 77% of mothers, in comparison to much lower percentage of fathers in this study. And what are the causes, as you probably can guess, and in fact what Danilo was speaking, like that parental policy that favors mothers as parents. So one, breastfeeding is one thing, but also ironing, taking care of children, taking that pink suitcase in public, etc., etc. So our culture and our values prefer women as parents than men. Then also we have a low degree of acceptance of fathers' parental responsibilities for this category of unmarried people, and higher male mortality for men than for women. So, and why is this important? Because in all this, what this study showed, that these single mothers are in much worse position in the society in Serbia than single fathers or fathers and mothers which are in the marriage. So they usually have lowest social status, usually unemployed, financially dependent, they have lower income than other parents. More often than other, they're forced to live within extended household, because if they don't have an income, and they probably don't have any real estate on their name, so they have to live in extended households. And this was like really interesting for me. Their household equipment is worse than the others. So only 1/3 owns a car. So of all these female single mothers, only 1/3 has a car, which also I'm making reference to the moving in Belgrade. These mothers have the worst educational structure and the lowest educational aspirations for their child. And I think that this last bullet is like the most important and the hardest, because if they have like really low aspirations for their children, it's probably not going to end like poverty cycle, and their children are not going to climb the social ladder and break that cycle of poverty. So that was like first aspect of women being at greater risk of poverty, because if they got divorced, kids will probably be on their side, with them in fact. And now we're coming to this work-family balance. Professor Dubinka will speak probably more on this issue on Monday, but I just have to mention something like the most important things. So the activity rate of women is 47% and the activity rate of men is 72%, meaning that activity rate is the category where you have employed people and people who are searching for a job. So this means that women in Serbia work less and are not searching for a job. So, and the discrepancy between men and women in this activity rate is the highest in the category of women with lowest level of education. So only 31% of women with like primary or high school education is searching for a job or has a job, and in comparison to like 70% of men. The same, there is this gap with employment rate as well, and this was just interesting for me but not so important for the topic. Like self-employment in Serbia, it's twice as high in category of men than in category of women. So my question for you is, why women work less than men? So are they just like more lazy? Like Sarkin, I'm looking at you because like this is referring to your comment at the beginning, but I can just like move and show you some data. So these are the answers divided by gender on the question, why are you not working full time? And you can see like big discrepancy between answers given by women and men. So caring for children or disabled persons is given in 87% by female respondents in comparison to only 13% of male respondents. And we can see that family or personal reasons are also the thing why women are not working full time. So it's not the fact that they are not able or do not want to work full time, but they have other job at home, let's say it like that. And what men say on this question: they are unable to find a full-time job, 72%, and school and training, 61%. And this was like really interesting for me. So if you're not satisfied with your current job and you want to have a higher salary, better conditions, you can start schooling or some sort of a training and change the job. And in our societies, it's more possible for men to do so than for female, because if female have to take care of the children, that most probably in household division will be, okay, I will go to school and try to find a better job, and you just take care of the children. So, okay, so just like Mila.
I'm getting old, you know, and I have the impression that I always have something clever to say, whomever speaks. And I'm sorry for interrupting, but this can you just bring back this is one very interesting slide. You know that fertility rates differ across Europe, and fertility rates are high, for instance, in France and in Scandinavia. And nobody knows why. There are two assumptions. One, which is politically correct, that there is a higher level of gender equality in private life, in family life, meaning that, for instance, in Scandinavia, men can easily take parental leave, and they are encouraged to take parental leave. And whereas in countries such as Serbia, they have a right to take a parental leave, but all the informal norms work against that law, right? And this is one example where law is enacted in an effort to shift the gender relations and the domestic division of labor. And probably with the unsecure outcome. The other reason why they have higher fertility rates is most probably the immigrant Muslim population. That's.
Yeah, thank you. So,
Mila, just to mention, to put the question, so to add to the question why they work less full reasons employees work less than full-time female, and just to mention lazy does not belong there, because no laziness is just as how to say, as a joking question cannot be introduced, because everyday work is the full occupation and more than that, so no laziness.
yes, of course.
Sonia is going.
Everything is, yes, now when we are going to speak about unpaid work, we're going to see that it takes a lot of the time. So it's not lazy at all. It was just a funny comment to brought your attention. Okay, but thank you. Okay, gender pay gap. So on one side we have that women are working less than men and less searching for a job, especially in the category of women without education. But when they are working for the same positions which are needed, the same require level of education, they're earning less. So currently in Serbia it's 8.8 this pay gap, meaning that if man for this job earns 100 dinars, woman will earn 91.2 dinars. So it maybe looks like not a big difference. It exists, but it looks like it's not a big difference, and especially because it's above average in Europe. So we are not like the worst in comparison to EU countries. But what I'm going to show you on this table. So on this right part of the table, you have pay gap in for the jobs with a different level of education. So, for example, it's the biggest in the category of no education or incomplete primary education, like 21.2. And what you can see on this right side, participation of employees with low earnings in the total number of employed earnings. And you can see that for women is 46% and for men is 26%. So of all women who are working without education, 46 of them are earning less than, it's two-thirds of the median income for that job. So 46% of female workers are having a low earning job, and in comparison to 26% of men with the same level of education. So if we add this discrepancy with these previous questions about women working less, so it's not just that they're working less, but when they are working, they're usually on the jobs where which are not rewarded equally for men and for women. So even on the labor market, there is this division between men and women. So even if you enter a labor market, it's going to be a discrepancy in favor of men and not in the favor of women. And now we are going to the unpaid work. So it's defined as work that produces goods and services but does not bring direct remuneration. It's taking care of the children, it's doing ironing, household, home chores, etc. And it's like universal. In United Nations were doing data in 90 countries, collecting data in 90 countries. So women spend on average 3 times more time per day than men performing unpaid work. And in Serbia, we have statistics. So regardless of level of education, women spend like a little bit more than 4 hours a day on unpaid work, and men spend 2 hours on unpaid work. And if we would go to pay that unpaid work, there is this interesting calculation done by United Nations you and women in Serbia, it would be like 15% of GDP of Serbia for 2021, or 6,000 billion euros. So it's huge amount of work, and it's not paid. And now I'm going to show you, since this like quite known, and it was spoken about this in all these previous lectures. So, but what I wanted to show you, these two studies regarding unpaid work. One is in rural areas, and other one is done during Corona and on rather young populations. So between 19 and 35 years were respondents, and you're gonna see that this division hasn't changed. So even in our age, there is that presumption that that homework or household work and chores are women's job. So this first study, Unpaid Work of Women in the Countryside, it was done in Kolubara district around Valjevo, Mionica and Ub. You can see this first thing, which was really interesting for me. So households are owned in 88% of the cases by men, and land was owned in 84% by men. So women do not have any property rights on where they live, and they're seen as helpful members of the household without any personal income. So it's true that the whole household has an income, but they personally do not have income, and they are not they're not insured, they don't have pensions, etc., etc. So and what about unpaid work? So as you could guess, it's the division and the patriarchal model is really strong. So 91% of the cases, respondents stated that only female members of the family perform tasks of maintaining home, preparing meals, shopping, and 77% of respondents stated that only women take care of their children, while at the same time they perform work in the field with the cattle, etc. But so even if they're working in the field and with the cattle, the home jobs inside the home are just their responsibility. And so what about this other research? So it was done in Serbia and Bosnia and Herzegovina, and results which you probably already know is that women more often switched to work from home than men, and it was really hard for them to divide business on one side and family life. And what also was shown in this study is that the amount of time spent on unpaid work increased significantly, and you can see here 3 times more. So 13 hours per week was done on housework, and half of the respondents stated that they were working more during Corona than before that. And this is like really interesting for me. So how we are perceiving equality inside home. So three quarters of respondents, so female respondents who live with partners and or husbands, indicated that they were sharing household chores equally. So 3/4, like around 70%, say we are dividing jobs equally. But on the other question, how many working hours are you working inside home and how many working hours your husband is working, showed that women works more in 30% of the cases than their partners. So this was like really interesting. So equally, in their opinion, was like he's at least working something. So like there is this like different like perceived equality. And why there is this increase in unpaid work during Corona? It's because of, first and foremost, decrease of availability of institutions for care for children, first of all. And also in Serbia, it was, you should add that grandparents and people above 65, age of 65, were not able to move during quarantine, so they were not able to help parents with their children. And what this conclusion from this this research is that pandemic worsened existing inequalities in the sphere of domestic work, so the greatest burden of the pandemic was borne by women. During the crisis, we just go back to our patriarchal model of dividing work. And so all these previous four things are rather known and rather researched. So we saw like 3 or 4 researches on these topics. We have statistics done by government, and these next 2 things were like really shocking for me and rather unknown, despite the fact that I finished Faculty of Law. So I had exams on property law and inheritance law, and I wasn't aware of this division between men and women in property ownership and resignation of inheritance. And what was also shocking for me, when I was speaking to my students, they were like, of course it exists. And I was like, really? Is that obvious? And they were like, yeah, it exists, and it should. Even they were like, it should be like that. So I'm very looking forward to new researches in this area, especially in the Faculty of Law. So I'm very looking forward to them. So property ownership. 25% of women have property registered in their name in Serbia. So if you go to register office, 3/4 of properties are on the man's name, and there's only 12% of women which are co-owners. And in rural areas, it's even more. 84% of women do not have any real estate in their name, and also agricultural land is in the 80% of the cases owned by men. And even if we move from real estate parts and move to being in the on the market, owning house, I translate it as household, it's gazdinstvo, there is gap.
So when we see these numbers and percentages, one thing came to my mind. I would just ask myself which number of those women and those men are a married couple, meaning if there is one name in books of lands or any way you call it, in law it is counted as for both for both spouses. So is there a data on unmarried and married people?
Yeah, thank you very much for this question, because I was thinking the same. So if these women are in the marriage, then half of these, all 75% of property are theirs, in fact. But we don't have data, unfortunately. But think of these. You know that because you're going to be a lawyer, but can you imagine some women, cross fingers, living in the rural areas? Do you really think that she's aware that she can have half of household?
Yeah, actually no examples from rural area where, women was according to the law, after she died, then this part of her property was divided to her, but she never could claim anything in surrounding when she was really in a patriarchal house where everything was in the hands of her husband. So this is this question between law, the written thing, and the reality, this informal, these gender regimes that are prevalent and dominant. So yeah.
Exactly, but because I'm going to show you on this next slide, we don't have studies for Serbia, but we have for Macedonia, for Albanian communities. These Albanian women are not even aware that they have any kind of rights, because what they're taught from their early age, that land is owned by man and it should be inside home. So because she's going to get married, she's going to get it's miraz. It's like married present. Yeah. Dowry. Okay, and she will like take that present and go to next to her husband's home. So it's a good question, but I think still, but even if they're aware and they're living, for example, in the Belgrade, I'm sure a lot of procedural obstacles if you want, for example, to get divorce and then claim. Yes, but now it's just an assumption because we don't have studies on this issue, but I'm looking forward to making one. So, and the other topic is really connected to this previous one, voluntary resignation of inheritance, and we have only this data made by CEDAW that in 2017 43% of women resigned from their inheritance and in favor of their brothers in 55% and in favor of their sons in 13% of the cases. And these are these informal practices which are like really strong and really hard to break. So, and in my opinion, then for Serbia, yes. That is the reason why, in my opinion, inequality in income exists, but probably in Serbia, inequality in I have here in wealth is probably much greater between men and women. And so, right now, I have some concluding remarks about feminization of poverty and what influences and what causes it. Stereotypes, difference in earnings, mismatch between work and family life, so all these mostly informal norms which are below the law. And the question is for you and for us, what now? What to do now? And I'm gonna just make give one of the possible solutions, because when I was thinking about this subject, this picture which was from the beginning of this lecture was on my Facebook page like 11 years ago, and I was thinking about Mila when she was 15 living in Vranje in South Serbia, between Mila now being 26 and being on her PhD studies, what have changed. And I would say that education is most powerful tool here for changing values and society norms, and it has to be done parallel with legal norms. So that's the reason why I think that this gender school is really important. So maybe I didn't change your mind completely, but at least if you start to think of any kind of gender perspective on poverty in Serbia, I will be like really happy. Thank you very much. Just like, let's check the chat. But it's for Danilo. So
you can read it.
Yeah, Tiana said that Austria. Austria has good programs for change of profession after parental leave. Similar programs don't exist in Serbia. Yeah.
Maybe we can hear more if Tiana is here. Maybe she can share experience. I mean, maybe she's from Austria or she's studying there. If she's still with us.
Yeah, I'm here. My sister lives in Austria, and they have many options of changes of profession after parental leave. If you, for example, try to prolong parental leave for more than a year, you have many options, many courses that you attend, and they are paid by the state. The similar cases don't exist in Serbia. If you want to change profession after parental leave to be more like let's say, easy to hire after parental leave.
Thank you very much.
And also, let me just add, there's also many problems with, let's say, the part-time work. Not many companies allows it, and also taxes for the part-time work is the same as the full-time.
Yeah, that's the same issue in Serbia. So for a worker, it's better to be full-time employed. It's the same level of. We have a question. It's the same in Serbia. Thank you, Tiana.
Well, firstly, Mila, thank you for this well-structured presentation. It was really a good overview with each of these topics. And considering this, factors that women, when they do this maternity leave, when they come back to their positions, they're often staying in the same position as they were before, or even worse, they are downgraded from their positions, which is not a good practice. And also, from the beginning, in the beginning of the presentation, you mentioned this single parenthood, and also I can see that this mentorship for Professor Danilo, when 6 years ago in March 2017, I feel old now, but it was the TV commercials was Medela, I think, and Professor Danilo mentioned this portrait of a perfect family on TV commercials, and it was even there we can see these roles that women are in the kitchen preparing Medela sweets, and these men come from work, relax with the family, and we can see that it influences also people to think, for example, when they are in single, divorced families, also kids and young population, that they are some kind of damage and that it's not well portrayed. And also in the law we can see these only 3 categories of single parenthood, and we have a lot more that you mentioned. So that's what I wanted to say.
Yeah, I have to add that when I'm thinking of this gender perspective, for me it's really interesting to think of our old sayings in Serbia. For example, žensko dete tuđa večera, žensko dete tuđa sreća, which you would translate as female child, other families' happiness. Let's translate it like that. So, and you're from the early age influenced by these sayings, and it's this model is naturalized, so it's everywhere, and then you believe it's natural, but in fact it's taught and learned, and it can be unlearned as well.
Can I add? As you said, there is a division of income within the family, and so there are informal structures that say it's the man who decides on the way that we're going to spend money. So researches show that women decide upon the small things, like are we going to buy carrots or cabbage, while men decide upon the big things, like are we going to go to the holidays or are we going to buy a new car, for example. There is an internal struggle in between the couples and the households about the financial resources. Some parts of the society have a particularly interesting strategies on how to grasp money or control over the financial resources of the family. And so one research on rural pomažući članovi domaćinstva, family helpers in rural households. You know what are family? These are the people who work but are unpaid, like people who work on the rural household with stocks and plants and everything, but they don't get formally paid. They are not insured. Women are the majority of family helpers in the agriculture and in the small businesses. And in rural areas, women have a particular strategy to grasp the financial resources. They want to go and sell the goods in the market. Prodaju na pijaci. Why this is important? The qualitative survey revealed that this is important because this is the only opportunity when they actually control the money.
Yes.
And so they can spare some money for their own needs, because typically men would not husband will not allow his wife to spend money on cosmetics,
Wardrobe, whatever.
whatever. Yeah. And so there are various strategies how actually women break these gender micro issues.
So we can very conveniently quote Michel Foucault with his famous knowledge, in this case education is power.
But I would like to think that education has that much influence. In fact, yes, why not? I was thinking.
We also have different contents of the education and different
Absolutely.
systems of values
Absolutely.
promoted through education. So not just education as such.
Yeah.
We spoke this morning about very well educated, highly, at the most level educated men who beat or kill.
Women in a domestic violence, so nothing. I mean,
That's not-
education doesn't prevent you from.
But on the bright side, you remember the table with the values. So the differences in values when it comes to gender roles in Serbia are between men and women and between educated and less educated. So and the age. So more educated, both men and women, but particularly women, are more emancipated and more willing to accept gender equality and equal gender roles. That's what the data says. On the other hand, younger women are more emancipated than younger men, and this is going to be interesting in the future when this, things roll out. We will probably be in a conflict between the younger generations, between the boys or the young men and young women, and it is the education, but it's also time, because time also brings on the private and public agenda various ideas about gender qualities.
So answer was yes. Yeah.
Professor Daniel also mentioned this, that women are mostly in charge of these small things in the household, like buying groceries, and we spoke about with Professor Svetislav and Lydia that mostly husbands in the household are not really aware how these products are expensive, especially now with this rise of prices of every aspect of. So they're in charge of the budget of the household, but they are not really aware how all that is expensive, but woman knows because and that's why also she do not have really a budget for herself, for her care and stuff. So it's also, we spoke about it. Mila, you were also.
Yeah, I found that also really interesting. So I learned a lot as well in this summer school. So besides being a lecturer, it was really interesting. Yes, I agree.
To kind of bring some stuff together, what Nemanja was saying, education, or we could say knowledge is power, and the cause of many of these issues, especially the property and the inheritance ones, one of the factors has to be the lack of knowledge that these women do have these rights. And when thinking about that, you kind of have to think that this is a problem that is probably going to solve itself. We could accelerate it, but with the globalization and the free flow of knowledge that's going on in the world, I mean, the rural areas are kind of struggling to stay as rural as they once were. Some women are aware of what is happening in the West, of what is happening in the East, and soon they're going to know that they do have half the property. They do have the ability to inherit stuff, and I would have to think that somehow this is going to play a role, and it's going to be solved very soon.
There are also there is an economic justification for that norm. It's not insane. I mean, economic justification is when you look throughout the history, and there is an excellent book, Marin Žanin Čalić, Social History of Serbia. She very nicely explains how various agrarian, cultural, and other policies actually led to a specific type of rural areas that we have now in Serbia, with small households that basically do not produce for the market. Natalia Bogdanov from the Faculty of Agriculture conducted a research like a decade ago, and she's a brilliant agroeconomist. She claims that at that point in time, 1 in 5 rural households were producing for the market. So everybody else was engaged in a subsistence farming, right? So there is a whole set of various public policies that kept Serbian rural household very, very small and didn't allow its complete bankruptcy from the late 19th century throughout the first half of the 20th century. Then there were industrial policies that were designed in a way to keep people in halfway position, so-called polutani. So you have Cvetko, I forgot his name, a famous sociologist from the 70s who has done research on polutani in Cvetko Ubimasa. And so there are structures within the society that keep these gender patterns. It's not all about the education. I mean, education is important, but money is even more important, or the subsistence of the family, the ability of the family to survive. So just let's not be so over-enthusiastic about the education, okay?
It's one of the
But please,
measures.
No, but I want to follow the colleague with this enthusiastic approach and to counterpose what I had already said about highly educated male killers or abusers. Education as such contains capacity for opening minds and revising mindsets. So from that point of view, even those traditionalist, highly educated male, there is a hope for them to overcome, or for some of them to overcome that, so to say, strict keeping on privileges based on their patriarchal patterns and patriarchal dividend. So I agree with you, not only empowerment, not only of female, but also of male in this gender perspective is more probable for those better educated.
Yeah. Well, that whole process can be faster with education. It will be done probably without education as well, but it will be faster with education. And I think that we can end now discussion. Any more questions? No? Okay. So now I'm giving floor to Valerija Dabetic.
15 minutes break. 15 minutes break.